Hey everyone, welcome to the Church Explained podcast, a conversation to grow your leadership and build your church. Today we've got an amazing guest. We've got Dustin Stradley, the whole way from Florida. And I like what you've said there, Dustin, this idea of learning from other people around us. And even if they haven't got the same experience as us, they have their own experience, which they can add into our lives, add into our church. And sometimes people have great ideas, and we've just got to have an openness as leaders, I think, to listen to them and take on board with humility. I think these days we've got to take it on board with humility, and believe actually they've got something of value to give. Yeah.
For sure, yeah. It's easier said than done.
Yeah, exactly. You're living that out right now. That's the thing. So it's great to hear. Brand new role, all those changes. I'd love just to dig in deep a little bit if I can, to be a little bit nosy.
Bring it on.
A little bit nosy, almost to get behind the scenes a little bit. Obviously, you're working with a lot of the campus pastors. Your key thing is to obviously inspire them, equip them, train them. I wonder if you could give us a little bit of a sneak preview of what does that look like? How are you guys training people at Elevation Church? What are you doing? Because obviously you're producing some amazing leaders, and I think there's something maybe we can glean from you guys. So I wonder if you'd share a little bit behind the scenes stuff of what's happening.
For sure. Let me give you. I thought about this earlier because I thought it was a good question. I don't know that we have a specific program or a formulated way of doing this.
Yeah.
But I did come up with four principles that I think have been helpful in developing and building our campus pastors. So I'll give you all four and then I'll break them down real quick.
Yes.
Number one would be learn. Number two would be empower. Number three would be ask. Number four would be demand. So learn. What are you learning about yourself and what are you learning about others? Because leaders are learners.
They have to be.
There is no one size fits all tool to build all leaders. Every person has a unique genius. So how I lead Dave may look different from how I lead Nathan. Because Dave is wired differently than Nathan. God has created us all unique according to his image, with different gifts, different strengths, different weaknesses, all these things combined. So we have to learn about the people that we lead. There is no formula that if I apply this formula to every person that I lead, I will get X results.
Sure.
So constantly asking the people I lead, what are you learning about the people you lead? What are their love languages? What energizes them? What discourages them? How do they best receive feedback? Do they need words of affirmation? Do they need you to spend time with them? What is most meaningful to them? Learn about the people that you lead, but also learning about yourself. One of the best investments you can make is to invest into yourself. So if I'm not aware of my tendencies, if I don't know my own strengths, if I don't know my own areas of weakness, if I don't know where I can best add value, then I have nowhere to aim. So leaders are learners. Two, empower. So don't just see people as a means to get things done, but see getting things done as a means to build people. So this isn't just delegating tasks. Well, I've got a lot on my to-do list today, Dave, so I'm going to find 5 people to take it off my plate so I can be freed up to go play basketball. But instead, how can I see each one of these opportunities as an opportunity to build someone, to be a better husband, a better mom, a better leader, to build a better human being? So what are the tasks and projects this may be something I asked one of my leaders, and I'm asking myself, that you're holding on to that you need to empower someone else to own? And how can you see this as an opportunity, not just to get things off your plate, but an opportunity to build them into being a better leader? So helping them to discover their own gifts, or
Sure.
inviting them into the budgeting process, which then will help them with their own personal budgeting, which then now helps them to build up financial blessings for their wife and children and their children and their children. The third would be ask, A-S-K, ask. If you keep telling people what to do, they'll always wait for your next command. But asking questions, guiding them to a solution instead of just giving them a solution, that's better development.
Brilliant.
So something Pastor Craig Groeschel asked on his podcast recently, or it was an exercise. He said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good of a listener are you in developmental conversations? And the way you can discover that is ask the people on your team, ask your spouse, and then try to ask 5 questions before ever offering any suggestions.
Brilliant.
And men are particularly not great at this. We hear someone present the problem, we want to bring a
We want to
solution.
fix it. Yeah.
But what if we want to fix it? But what if instead we ask 5 questions and maybe we lead them to the same solution we had in our mind in the first place, but now there's more power in them discovering it than me giving it. And the last one would be demand. Pastor Stephen Furtick, my mentor, my leader, my pastor, once said, God doesn't demand what he doesn't deposit. That the demand placed on you is an indication of the deposit in you. And Larry Bry, one of our other pastors, once told me, he said, the greatest compliment I can give you is to demand more of you. So placing a healthy demand, and I don't mean to be, let's not take it out of context, be a demanding leader. It doesn't give you license to be a jerk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It doesn't give you license to not be sensitive to all the different responsibilities someone's carrying as a dad or mom, or in the workplace or within the church or within the business. But just like weightlifting, like oftentimes I think in my mind, this is all I can do. But one of my workout buddies, he said, you can do more than that.
Sure.
I was like, I probably not. He said, yes, you can. And he put more weight on the bench. And by him putting more weight on the bench and it putting more of a demand on me, it showed me that I had more in me. The demand indicates the deposit. Because of that, I grew in confidence. I became stronger. I was able to lift more weight. So one question you could ask is, who is one person you currently lead that you need to put more on? And once you identify that person, what's one way you can demand more of them this week?
Nice.
And I'm just thankful for the people who called things out of me that I didn't know was in me. Almost every opportunity, even within our ministry or even before stepping into vocational ministry, public speaking used to be my biggest fear.
Wow.
And I remember at a sales conference, I was there to learn, just take notes, sit in the back. And there were about 700 people at this conference. And one of the executives there, he calls me over to the side. He said, hey, one of our speakers just canceled. I want you to get up and speak. So you obviously don't know. I was like, you obviously don't know me well. He was like, no, you have a gift. He was like, you're a communicator. I said, well, I've never spoken in front of 700 people, and you're only giving me an hour's notice to figure out what the heck to say to them. And many of them are way smarter than I am. He said, you're going to do great. He gave me quick 2 or 3 minutes worth of handles, told me to be myself, and just tossed me up there. And it was like that kind of demand that was placed on me that showed me that there was something in me, that God had placed something in me. And I could give you story after story of people who demanded something of me, demanded more of me, and it felt overwhelming. Now, of course, if there's so much weight on the bench that I can't get it off my chest, I also had leaders who cared enough to come and spot me and pull the weight up so that I didn't I didn't get injured. And we have to be sensitive to that.
Yeah.
But those are some of the things that I started thinking through when developing our campus pastors, developing different staff members, developing leaders in general. Help them to learn
that's
about
great.
themselves, help them to learn about the people they lead, empower them as an opportunity to build them, ask them lots of questions, and then put a great demand on them so they can get stronger and grow into who God has created them to be.
Yeah, I love that. And just let's recap those 4 things then, because you had ownership in there. What else did you have? You had ownership,
So I had learn,
learn.
I had empower, I had ask,
Yeah,
I had demand, which spells the word
fantastic.
lead, by the way, just to make it
Oh,
simple for
yeah,
people.
okay, yeah.
Spells the word lead.
That is useful, actually. That's useful for people who are not quite thinking this afternoon. So lead, I love that, and I think there's some amazing stuff in there. And there's something powerful about actively listening to people. You know, people who are on your staff or on your team. Like one of the things I had to, I want to say relearn, as I was doing some training to be a coach, like a leadership coach, was this idea of actively listening. So
Yes.
in other words, previously, before then, if someone was with me having a conversation, I would be thinking of the next thing to say to them to try and help them and solve their issue. Actually, and
Yes.
by doing that, I wasn't really listening. So that was a big mind shift for
That's
me, and
what
I
gets
think
us
of
in trouble in our marriages.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think there's something in that about listening actively. So one of the things I do is, like, if I coach people, you know, listening is not just about the verbal communication, but the best questions come out of what you see, what you hear, and what you sense in the space. So what you see,
I
what you
love
hear,
it.
what you sense in the space, and not just the words, because actually our bodies say a lot of
I'm taking
stuff.
some
Do you know
notes.
what
I'm taking notes.
I mean? Make some notes. But it's a real great skill to learn rather than trying to think, hey, I've got to get the next question to that person, I've got to get the next answer. I just discovered by doing that, you're not really being present with them. You're not really listening to
Mm.
them where they're at. So I would encourage all leaders, like even if you're not coaching, like if you're with people, truly, if you want to truly listen to them, don't form a question in your head that you're going to give them. Listen to them first.
And it's one of the greatest gifts we can give someone is
Absolutely.
our presence, like being
Yeah,
present. And that's a rare commodity in today's culture.
yeah,
We're so
absolutely.
distracted. I can easily be in a podcast with you thinking about the meeting that starts from 30 minutes from now, that I'm missing the gift that you are to me in this moment. But then in the next meeting, I'm thinking about the never ending to do list I'm trying to accomplish before the Sabbath. And I can easily get distracted. So this is a struggle for me. And my
Yeah,
counselor, when Maddie and I went through premarital counseling, he challenged us on this to start to listen to one another and then to repeat back to one another what we're hearing.
yeah,
So
somewhere.
even if it sounds elementary to my wife, and she's way better at it than I am, and most females are, um,
Yeah, yeah,
I will say, okay, babe, what I'm hearing you say is, and then repeat back to her word for word what I heard her say. And sometimes she'll say, that's not what I said.
no, I didn't say that at all. You heard something else.
But it's also a
That's the
good
thing.
practice for leaders. It's
Yeah,
relationship building. So sometimes we'll do a role play where we'll have leaders
sure.
in a room, and so there's 3 levels. There's easy, medium, and hard. And we're going to start easy, where Dave
Mm,
says, my favorite Starbucks beverage is nitro cold brew. And then I say, what I'm hearing you say is your favorite Starbucks beverage is nitro cold brew. That's easy. Great. And if I said it perfectly, then we can move on to the next round. If I did not, then Dave gets to call me out. He's like, nope, that's not what I
Nice.
said. I said my favorite drink. I didn't say beverage. I said drink. And it's like even just the
Ah,
small nuance of missing a word.
yeah.
Or I don't like cold brew, but I do like nitro cold brew. So if I tell you my favorite beverage is nitro cold brew, and then Dave brings me a cold brew, that's that's
Dangerous.
that's where that's where marriage conflict happens, right?
Yeah, I tell you what, there's some useful stuff in here. Sometimes stuff like this seems very elementary, but actually it's often the small things like this that people miss. And I just want to encourage leaders, like listen to this, put it into practice. You know, if you're in a staff meeting or with your team, like truly listen, because actually people will feel so much more valued by that listening, won't they? So it's fantastic
Well,
that. Hey,
and
listen,
you said it
go
earlier.
ahead.
Just last thing I'll say is you said it earlier. Like we as leaders feel pressured to always have a
Yeah,
response.
always have the solution. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
oftentimes when people come to us, they don't really even want our advice. Let's be
No,
honest.
no,
I'm learning that more
they
and
want to
more.
be heard. Yeah.
Hey, Dustin, I got a question for you, and I'd love your advice on what I should do. And I already know they probably already made up their mind on what they should do. They
Yeah,
really just
absolutely.
want someone to listen.
They do.
So
They
return the
do. Yeah.
question. I'm like, well, Dave, what do you think you should do? And Dave's like, well, I think I should do this. And it's like, okay, well, then maybe you should do that, Dave. And then it's like, oh my gosh, thank you, Dustin. That was so helpful. Thank you. That was meaningful. I'm like, all I did was listen
Yeah,
and return the
exactly.
question.
Yeah, that was the best advice I ever had. It was your own advice,
Yeah,
of course. That's the challenge, isn't
which
it?
was your own.
Hey, let's just, we've got a few more questions as
Yeah.
we go through the podcast. But I want to ask you then, what do you think, like just in your context or even a wider leadership context, what do you think is the biggest challenge that young leaders are facing? And how do you address them?
It's probably not just young leaders, it's many leaders and many people, but we have an identity crisis in a performance driven culture where validation is found in likes, in approval. The temptation is to lead to be liked
Sure.
instead of leading confidently based on conviction. So if I'm starting from the place of how can I get more influence? How can I get more likes? How can I win more people over? Not inherently bad questions, but maybe not the best starting point. Because in the pursuit of influence, it may be easy to compromise identity. And my identity can be found in what I do instead of who I am. Or my identity is then shaped by who others want me to be instead of who I am in my core. And when I don't know who I am, I can compromise my character and core values for more
True.
influence in our culture. So it's again starting with this identity crisis of finding. I went through this big time coming out of the pandemic.
Sure.
You strip away the microphones, you strip away the room with thousands of people. I was traveling and speaking all over the world at one point. Social media influence was growing, and then pandemic happens. Everything is stripped away. Now, who am I? And I had a bit of an identity crisis because my identity was in what I did, not who I truly am. And it's interesting, especially in the world of social media and just as we have evolved culturally in different aspects, how much of you know you asked like the biggest challenge for young leaders is leading
Yeah.
from a place of how can I get more likes? How can I win them
Sure.
over? How can I say the
Yeah.
sexiest thing? How can I say the most tweetable thing? how can I just put together this little package in which everyone's going to reshare? And it's not just social media, but then you can easily
Sure.
begin to compromise who you are at your core and your values. And it's an interesting dynamic that many of us leaders are wrestling through.
Yeah, I think you're right there, and I think many leaders would have faced very similar challenges during the pandemic and the sort of lockdown, not doing the things they were normally doing, whether they were preaching every week or leading and doing stuff, and then suddenly not having that, you weren't doing that in the same way, so it was a big shift for people, really. So yeah, I think you're right. There's something around identity and to be secure in who we are rather than like trying to get all the likes and, as you say, trying to be the funniest person on stage. You know what I mean? Because all that, it comes and goes, but actually the stuff we're about as leaders is bigger than that and more important than
Right.
that. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Like, can I rest easy at night knowing that God loves me, regardless of how I perform today? God loves me. He's not mad at
yeah,
me. He's not disappointed. He's not discouraged with me. That God loves me, that He is pleased with me, that He is for me, that He is in me, that He is with me, that my wife loves me,
it's a big,
that I'm a good husband. Even if I didn't put
yeah,
the most viral video out on Instagram today, does my wife love me? Was I present with my daughter? I mean,
sure,
she's only 5 months. She's not going to remember a lot of dad right now, but soon enough, she's going to remember this version of dad who's with her, but not really
true,
with her,
right,
because I'm just trying to get a few more things accomplished and I'm trying to achieve a few more things. And again, as a driven leader, this is really difficult for me. I'm really
mm,
reevaluating all of my priorities and what matters most and rediscovering. I know all the right things to say. Well, who I am in Christ, but it's really God's doing a deep work in me as a leader to lead from the place of being in unity with Him and being content with who I am instead of leading from a place of finding my validation in what I do.
yeah, I like that. I like that. Hey, let me give you a couple of quick fire questions.
All right, let's go.
So you can do this quick, but they're great questions, and I don't want to miss them. So, but quick fire. What are you most excited about, and what are you most challenged about?
I think the opportunity, this is one and the same, the opportunity to pioneer the next version of God's church.
Oh, I like
Uh,
that.
of course, of course, a church is not a building, it's God's people. And people's habits and mindsets are always evolving. So
Yeah,
it's been
true.
interesting over the past couple of years, yet invigorating in regards to building the next version of God's church. And I'm not sure that anyone has it figured out yet, but it's an
No,
exciting
absolutely.
challenge. And if you do, like, let's connect off this and you give me all the
Yeah.
secrets on how to best do
Let
that.
us know. Hey, can I say that actually could be a good second podcast. We might get you back again to talk about that in more detail because it's quick fire this one, but I really want to dive into that. But I'm going to resist
Okay.
because we may come back to that. We're going to resist,
All
but I
right.
may
We'll
come back because there's
exercise the
something to
discipline
talk
to stay
about.
focused and we'll come back to that. All right.
Oh, it's hard that one because
Oof.
it's packed. It's packed.
It's very packed.
Um, the next one is this: Who has inspired you the most and why?
That'd be my dad.
Say some
Why?
more.
His consistency.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
So consistency and commitment is a rare value in today's culture, but it's a superpower of my dad's. He prayed for me every day before I was even born into this world, and he has prayed for me every day since I have walked on this earth.
Amazing.
He's worked the same job for over 45 years now
Wow.
with the same positive attitude, integrity, intense work ethic, and he leverages that job. He works at a chemical plant. he leverages that job as an opportunity to reach people for Christ.
Love it.
He's consistent. He's consistently encouraging. He's consistent in spending intimate time with God. I mean, he wakes up at 4 a.m. every day before he goes into work, and he would just fall flat on his face in the Word of God and just cry out to God every single day.
Wow.
He doesn't have a podcast. You won't see any videos from him on YouTube. You'll never hear a tweetable statement that everyone's sharing on Instagram. He doesn't even know how to turn a computer on. Seriously. He just got his first smartphone. Got his first smartphone, and we had to train him on how to use a smartphone. But this man has more joy and peace than most I've seen. And he evangelizes better than most I know. He's committed to God. He's committed to his family. He's committed to his church. He's consistent. So that's been a great model for me throughout my life. He's my hero.
Hey, and a big shout out to your dad. Say that you've been on this podcast and tell him we commend him for that. We're liking him on the podcast though, because he likes to be behind the scenes, isn't that what you're saying? There's something powerful about just being hidden and not being up front. There's a little bit of something we can learn from that as well. Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely. Hey, listen, we're going to head to our final question. This is our bonus question today before we wrap up. It's been brilliant to have you on the podcast. We've had some fun, and
it's been an honor.
We could certainly get you back for some of this stuff as well. But here's the final question we like to ask our guests, which is our bonus question, which is this. What is the one question no one is asking you that you wish they would, and what is your answer to that question?
This is a tough question, Dave. Why are you going to put me on the spot like that?
It's got to be done. It's got to be done. It's the final one.
I mentioned it. Oh, goodness. So much pressure. No, I mentioned it earlier. Why?
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to live in how or what. Like, what are we doing today and how can we accomplish that? What's on my calendar? What diet plan should I try and how does that work? Those are not bad questions. I'm a leader who's biased towards action, not bad questions, and they should be asked. But how often, Dave, you and I both know, does that not work? How many people have tried all the new diet plans, but none of them seem to work? How many people start there and never finish it? So I think sometimes we forget to ask the most important question, and this is the question we should start with, and that's why. Like, why is the thing that will wake me up every morning to accomplish the what and figure out the how?
Yeah.
And if your why is specific and strong enough, you can figure out any how.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, why am I doing this? Why am I working so hard to push this initiative forward or to build this or to go to this place? And it has to be emotional. And maybe my why, and your why can evolve over time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But my why for certain things, I mean, my future wife and my daughter was my why before I was married. Some of my habits I began to change long before I was married because I thought to myself, the decisions I'm making right now are not always only going to affect me. At some point, they're going to affect my future wife and my future kids. So why do I want to change these habits? Not just because I read an inspirational book and it told me I should change these habits, but why? Why for me? Well, I want to build up generational blessings for my children and their children. That's why I do a budget every day, a boring budget every single day. I look at a spreadsheet. My wife and I talk about numbers all the time. We didn't always do that. I don't like doing that.
Yeah.
I was the worst at math for the longest time. But why do we do that? Because we want to build up something for our daughter that maybe we never had.
Yeah.
And for her children at some point that they never had. We want to be insanely generous. God has given us everything that we have, and we just want to be an open vessel to let that flow through. So why do we put together a budget every single day and talk about it every single day? not just because someone told us we needed to put a budget together. That's too, I mean, but just be boringly consistent and start with the question, why? Why am I doing
Yeah, I
this?
like it.
That motivates me to
Yeah.
open up the spreadsheet. That motivates me to send the email. That motivates me to send a text message. That motivates me to get out of bed and go for a run this morning when I think about some of the health issues of people around me as they've gotten older and maybe didn't prioritize that. Why? That's much more motivating and deeper than just what should I do today or how should I get there.
Yeah, I love that. Bigger than how and bigger than what. So your question is ask the why, and maybe that's the thing that leaders should be doing, whether it's in ministry or even how they're running the church. Why are we doing this the way we're doing it is a great question to think through. And that would lead nicely into your thought on sort of the thing that challenges you and the thing that excites you about building the church for the future around that idea. And I think we may have to come back to this at some point because it's just triggered something in me that I think I'll need to pick up. But for today, it is a wrap. And hey, listen, it has been so good to have you with us the whole way from sunny Florida. Thank you for taking the time early in the morning. It's late in the afternoon for us, but thank you for being with us.
Thank you, guys.
If people want to connect with you or find you, how should they do that?
First, Dave, thank you. I love what God's doing through you, what's happening through opportunities like this, how many leaders you're helping in different industries, different businesses, different churches. Your ability to network and connect with people is unmatchable. It's amazing. So keep up the great work, and we're here to support you, and we're cheering you on every step of the way. Instagram, it's just my full name. Try to make it easy. Dustin Stradley. You can add me on Facebook, Dustin Stradley. Email dustinstradley@gmail.com. Try to keep it consistent, as simple as possible.
Fantastic. Well, we want to say a big thank you for being with us today, and we want to say to all our listeners, if they want to get some free resources to help in their church and their team, they can head on over to our website, icon.church/resources. They can pick up some free resources, and we just want to bless them as well.
Check it out. Go download them.
Check it out. Yeah, absolutely. And again, if you're listening to the podcast, let somebody know about it. Subscribe if you're whatever platform you're on, and let people know where to find us, because they too hopefully will enjoy what we have talked about today.